Look, you're not fooling anybody. You're trying to stop me from giving the answer. So let me give you the answer.
This is a little nutty. I gotta be honest.
Were you trying to get crazy with this, eh? Don't you know I'm loco?
You hear me? I'm not insane! This is not reality, not reality, not reality. This is reality. Not reality. Relax, buddy. You're awake now.
All hail the man called Calamity. Bad luck personified. The answer to the age-old riddle, what would happen to your life if you had sex with that black cat under a ladder? Well, I'll tell you what. You'd be Kurt
Ikenwald.
You can say what you want about the boys at Blizzard, but look at that reflection mapping, or ambient occlusion. These are all technical terms. I don't know what any of it means. But it looks like the sun's directly above him. It's almost realistic. You could reach out and touch that. Now, Kurt, well, he's the sort of man that doesn't settle for second best. Most people would take a horrific embarrassment happening to them and call it quits. That's where they draw the line. They've achieved all they want to achieve in the realm of making themselves look like a jackass. But not Kurt. He's got that Goku get 'em attitude. That one's for you, buddy. I know you'll appreciate it. From one weeb to another. Don't worry, I'm going to pack more of them in there. We'll get to that later. Now, Kurt, he doesn't settle for second best. He's going to keep overachieving. He's going to have that drive to move forward. There's always another bar to grab at. And he will outdo himself time and time and time again. But to really understand the story of Kurt and the catastrophes which surround him, we have to go all the way back to the beginning. Because who exactly is this man? And where did he get his start? So why don't you have a seat right over there? And let's begin.
For 5 years, beginning when I was 13 years old, I operated a pornographic website featuring images of myself loaded onto the internet by webcams. I was paid by more than 1,000 men to strip naked, masturbate, and even have sex with female prostitutes while on camera.
That young man giving testimony before the commission is Justin Berry, someone who found himself lured into the insidious side of the internet. A then young teenage boy who thought his webcam would be a means to meet new people, to make friends online, and to be able to reach out to others with common interests to help take care of the loneliness he felt in his day-to-day life. Instead, he found himself the focus of people who wanted to exploit him. As time went on and his interactions with these men continued, the requests they were giving him to simply do a stream or to put himself on webcam with only his shirt off morphed into more and more extreme and explicit sexual acts. As the years went by, the relationship he had with his abusers moved past purely a entertainer-customer relationship into that of a business partner, opening up websites such as Justin Friends to continue his streaming service. Justin Berry's story first came to light through the New York Times and the reporting of Kurt Ikenwald. Within his report, Kurt recounts how he first met Justin, his attempts to bring Justin away from this group of people, to get him to go forward to law enforcement, to bring evidence against the men that exploited him, to hopefully get charges brought and to get convictions so that these same people could not prey on other children. Through Kurt's reporting and his actions, he was able to get Justin to do just that. The story went national. It became a big piece of news. It won Kurt an award. All was looking well for Eichenwald. It was something to hang his hat on. He had saved a young man who was formerly a child porn star, brought about the beginnings of justice to get child pornographers and exploiters and molesters brought before the courts. Just another in a long line of successful stories that Kurt had written over the span of his career. An investigative reporter, a journalist who had a reputation for being detail-oriented and meticulous with what he did. And it was that mindset and that consistency on Kurt's part that won him the accolades of his peers. And yet it wasn't long after this report was published within the Times that issues began to crop up around Kurt and his relationship to the story, particularly the source, Justin Berry. Numerous outlets began to report on inconsistencies on how Kurt had conducted his investigation, as well as his relationship with the subject matter. Actions which seemingly went against the ethics policy and the standards and principles laid out at the New York Times, as well as numerous other papers, when it comes to how a journalist interacts with a story. One of the first issues to be raised within a year of this article going up was the fact that Kurt had paid Justin Berry money. It came out that Kurt had written a check to Justin for $2,000. something which the paper, the New York Times, prohibits. And yet Kurt said that it was a honest mistake. It was even more than an honest mistake. He had stated that he had met Justin, and a month before he even decided to write an article about Justin or his line of work, he had decided to give him $2,000 to get his life in order, that it was a personal loan that would be paid back to him, which it was. And yet he only neglected to mention this because he was under a deadline. He was working 15 to 18-hour days, 7 days a week to get this story compiled, and so it conveniently slipped his mind. When news that Kurt had paid money to Justin Berry, the source of the story, came out, the New York Times responded. It was put out there that this was an honest mistake, that it didn't affect the investigation, it didn't affect the reporting, and it didn't affect the important nature of what Kurt had written about. That this was the only mistake and the only payment that had been made. $2,000, perhaps another $10 payment, but that was it. There was no more money. Justin Berry had been cut a check for $2,000 and not a penny more, except for the other $1,100 that Kurt neglected to mention. An amount that was paid not just to Justin Berry, but to Justin Berry's business associate, the man that was running the website with him, a man who was later charged and convicted. That $1,100 payment wasn't disclosed until the court case began to proceed. And what was Kurt's response to that? Well, that's when he brought up epilepsy. Kurt went on to explain that this was a medical condition that he had, and that it affected his memory, and he had kept it a closely guarded secret. So the first time he had cut a check for $2,000 was before the story even took place. It was a personal business loan which he simply forgot about. The second time he had paid $1,100. It was an epileptic fit which wiped his memory out, and he didn't remember it at all. Even though when you look at the reporting around the issue, it seems that Kurt was taking measures to make sure that it didn't get connected back to him, since the money was paid through PayPal under different pseudonyms. Stranger still is when you begin to look at the timeline of how that money affected Justin Berry's activities, as well as other allegations that came out as reported per NPR. In January of '06, the Times received an email from Mitchell's mother. That was a man that was later convicted, the man that helped run Justin Friends with Justin Berry. Among her accusations was that Eichenwald had FedExed several $1,000s to help fund Berry's website. Eichenwald blew off the accusation, calling it, quote, a crappy lie. The NPR coverage of the Eichenwald story and the subsequent fallout from it raises some interesting questions. Why was it that after twice being shown to be inconsistent with the truth, whether that was a lie of omission, an intentional lie, or an impaired memory, why is it once all that information had come out that the New York Times didn't go back and look at the email they received from a man directly connected to the case, from his mother, saying that Eichenwald had personally paid thousands more to get Justin Berry to open up another website? Now that other website, the Justin Friends one, why is that so key to this entire story? Well, a Gawker article might actually shine some light onto that. This is back from 2007. Kurt Ikenwald has some splaining to do. In the article, it goes over the details about the initial $2,000, which wasn't mentioned. And it sets forward a timeline. Now, there are a few key pieces of information that come forward from this that tie back into the money that Ikenwald had given Berry. The first being that JustinFriends.com suddenly became active again. This website, which had existed but was completely defunct at this point, suddenly goes active once more. And it goes active once more after the money was received from Eichenwald by Justin Berry. Now, the second, more contentious piece of information that comes to light from this particular article, as relating back to Justin Friends, is that after the website became active once more, Justin puts on several shows. These are legal. Justin is almost 19. He also uploads videos of himself when he was 17, as well as a video of him masturbating with an underage boy named Taylor. This is a frequent claim by a person who claims to be a business partner of Justin Berry, Timothy Ryan Richards, or his supporters. Richards was convicted in October 2006 of distribution of child pornography, as well as other counts. It is unverifiable. When you gather together all these different sources, all the reporting that's been done about Kurt Ikenwald, about the New York Times, and the story on Justin Berry, details begin to emerge which cast a cloud of doubt over the integrity of the story and the people involved with it. When looking at this information and parsing through it, you're confronted with numerous facts. Those being that Kurt Ikenwald made numerous payments to Justin Berry. These payments were made through a number of different methods, under a number of different names. Ikenwald gave different excuses for why that was never disclosed. Within 10 days of receiving that money, a site that's run by Justin Berry, as well as a business associate who would later be convicted for child pornography, suddenly becomes active again. Another defendant who was convicted as well for child pornography alleges that once the site became active, within a few days, videos of underage boys engaged in sexual activities were put up and were viewable by members of the website. When you look at that sequence of events, and you take Kurt Ikenwald's statement at the beginning of this, that this was a month before he had any interest in writing a story about this, and within 2 to 3 weeks of having given that money to Justin Berry, a website is now up and active and distributing, or allegedly distributing, child pornography. It makes one wonder, it calls into question the integrity of the people involved. Other outlets, such as truthrevolt.org, followed this up with even more information. For those of you that have never heard of this website, it's one that was founded by David Horowitz and Ben Shapiro. That will be funny for another reason later on in the video. Newsbusters notes that even outlets like NPR ultimately found horrifying details, such as an account believed to have been from Eichenwald had high-level administrative access to the child porn site Just and Friends, which would have allowed him to closely monitor the site's business. And it would seem that even at the time this was taking place in the subsequent years after the article went up, numerous outlets had qualms about what was happening. I think though that NPR really helps to highlight this by listing out what they call 3 primary questions for the Times. Does the Times now plan on having Eichenwald's reporting during his tenure at the paper verified in light of the additional undisclosed payments he made to Berry? Does the Times plan to investigate if the money Ikenwald gave Berry was used by Berry to operate the website merely to generate a story? Does the Times plan to investigate, or has it investigated, why Ingracia declined to confirm the veracity of the email that accused Ikenwald of both exchanging funds with Berry and potentially funding Berry's web operation? But I think the most damning question, and the most pertinent one, is that second one. Was the money used to operate the website merely to generate a story? Take a moment to look at the details of everything surrounding this, of everything that's been reported about it. Ikenwald meets a young man. He gives him money. And seemingly a month later, he has a story about child pornography, about a website, about a former performer, and about men that are going to be arrested. If Ikenwald had not given Justin Berry the money, and that money had not been used to restart the website, and Berry had not continued on with his activities, would there have been any arrests? Would there have been any distribution of child porn? Would there have been an active child pornography website? Did the Times, did Kurt Ikenwald do this merely to generate a story? Now, these are merely questions. I'm not making any definitive declarative statements. I want to be very clear on that. I am just asking questions. So there you have Kurt Ikenwald, the only man in history who could rescue a child porn star, write a story that leads to arrest, and still find some way to fuck that up and look bad afterwards. But that's a trend which Kurt has continued onward for many years to come. Because if there is one thing Kurt is an expert at, it is making Kurt look bad.
I just had a seizure. Wow, that was a bad one. The pain of seizures. I have seizure pain. I have pain from the seizure.
Ma'am, that was not a seizure. That was a dance move.
December 15th, 2016 was a bad day to be Kurt Ikenwald. And it is a pity because it held such promise. Kurt was excited. He was going to be on Tucker Carlson that evening at 7 p.m. And while Kurt would leave a memorable impression on the audience, it probably wasn't the impression he was hoping to go for. Instead of the reputable journalist with a long storied history of writing investigative pieces that delve into issues people are interested in, he came off as, how can I put this gently, batshit insane. Now, the entire segment was 10 minutes long, and I would love to show the entirety of it to you, but I don't think Fox News will oblige me in allowing me to play the entire clip uninterrupted. So I've taken highlighted segments to try to give you an idea of just how badly this went. Things began to go downhill about 2 to 3 minutes into the interview, when Tucker Carlson is reading back statements that Kurt had made on social media, namely one concerning Donald Trump being institutionalized in a mental hospital.
But the next day you say, quite ironically, and I'm quoting, I believe Trump was institutionalized in a mental hospital for a nervous breakdown in 1990, which is why he won't release his medical records.
This would devolve into at least 5 minutes of straight theatrics, as Kurt did everything in his power to dodge giving an answer to the simple question which Tucker repeatedly asked him.
Was he in a mental hospital in 1990, as you allege, or was he not?
Let me answer the question.
Go ahead.
Look, you're not fooling anybody. You're trying to stop me from giving the answer.
Now that is impressive. You might not see bullshittery like that outside of a used car lot. But Kurt was actually able to take Tucker saying, go ahead, give me your answer, and turn that around into, you're not letting me answer the question. But he wasn't done there.
Okay.
So
I think
let's
that
go
you're humiliating
to,
yourself by your unwillingness to answer a simple question. So please answer it.
I am trying to answer the
question. Do you have
question.
evidence he was in a mental
Unfortunately, unlike
hospital in
on your
1990, or don't
world,
you?
reality is not always able to give you a yes or no answer.
Well, let's hop aboard the crazy train then and take that fucker all the way down to imagination land. Because apparently reality isn't going to allow Kurt to give us a coherent answer. Now this farce continued on for a good 5 solid minutes, inevitably leading Tucker to have to ask him another one.
And nobody's getting fooled. You're trying to stop.
How can Newsweek employ you as a reporter, Kurt, when you're throwing lines like this around that are untrue, that you can't substantiate, when you say to the president's
Tucker,
spokesman, F you, that's not the behavior of a reporter.
Okay.
Which is fairly sound. How could he be employed by Newsweek? How could he tweet out a public statement talking about a president-elect being institutionalized in a mental hospital and then refuse to expand on that? Or to simply say, yes, that's true, or no, that is untrue. But if you thought that was bizarre, you haven't seen anything yet. Kurt wanted to kick it up a notch. He wanted to pull a bit of an Emerald. He wanted to take that nutty and bring it all the way up to a nutty buddy.
How about this? I'm going to give you 30 seconds to answer this question. Do you have evidence that he was institutionalized in a mental hospital in 1990?
Still on
30
the table.
seconds.
Now, okay, I will say this, because it's a message I've got from people from the CIA. I know a lot of officers, I know a lot of agents, I've been in their homes, and they're really delivering this to you and to Donald Trump. These are people who have sacrificed a lot for this country.
Look at his face. Look at that expression. That's the expression you get when you're sitting next to a fucking crazy person on the bus in the city. That is the expression you get when you are in a confined area and you're thinking to yourself, what's the nearest window I can jump out of before this person tries to stab me with a needle? It's all in the eyebrows. He's communicating with those eyebrows that he's getting perhaps a little scared.
I'm starting to have concerns about you, Kurt. Tell me what the secret message from the CIA is.
Of course, much like the earlier question of, did you say this and is it true? Kurt's not going to give a clear answer on this one either. Instead, he's just going to keep freaking Tucker out to the point where he starts to express concerns about his well-being on a nationally televised news program.
We're out of time, Kurt, and I don't mean this in a cruel way. I would have real concerns if I were one of your editors, and I mean that. I'm not calling anyone a liar, but I am saying I'm concerned about your behavior on this show tonight.
Now, I'm sure you can imagine the reception that Kurt had waiting for him upon arriving back on his Twitter account after the interview had concluded. It would be putting it mildly to say that people were enjoying themselves, tearing into him, and he didn't help matters much by trying to elaborate on the message the CIA had given him to pass along to Tucker Carlson. Good old Kurt Ikenwald, said by his peers to be meticulous and detail-focused, forgot to write it down. Oops. You know, that super secret message from the Central Intelligence Agency, forgot to write that down. Even though I had a giant binder when I was on your show from analyzing everything you said so I could bring it up to argue with you about. The message from the CIA directly to you, though, forgot to scribble that one down. Maybe it was up on the fridge next to bills that were due at the end of the month, and I just tossed it out without thinking about it. It's probably in the garbage with the cable bill. But to have a truly terrible day, you need more than one thing to go wrong. You need at least 3 of them. And here's number 2. Amidst the fallout from the Tucker Carlson interview, as people were digging into him and mocking him for looking like an asshat, Sebastian Jones, a freelance journalist, decided to dredge up the entire Justin Berry situation, linking to previous articles and discussing inconsistencies with Kurt's reporting and questions that still surrounded what had happened. So there Kurt is, in the middle of a miniature shitstorm, one that he's helped to fuel with his appearance on television, with questions about his past being dredged up, All of these horrible things being said by these mean people on social media are all happening at once. What could possibly make it worse? I know. How about a seizure? Replying to Jew Goldstein, this is his wife. You caused a seizure. I have your information, and I called the police to report the assault. As if Kurt's luck wasn't bad enough on the 15th, he was memed in the first degree, so terribly so, that he was on the floor shitting himself and seizing, and his wife had to take over his Twitter account to let everybody know about it. No, she didn't focus on her husband and his medical emergency. She wasn't holding his hand or telling the kids to get the car to come around. She was making sure all his Twitter followers knew that he was having an epileptic fit. She made sure to update everybody on his status, wanting to give those real-time updates, the things that people are really concerned about. His health can wait. His Twitter followers need the deets immediately. Now, this tragic event led Kurt to get in contact with law enforcement, with the FBI, with a lawyer, to subpoena Twitter to get the information of the user who had done this. And while the case was moving forward to identify this individual, to strip them of their anonymity, to arrest them for gifting somebody on Twitter, Kurt did the media tour. He went on Good Morning America to discuss the horrific events of that evening.
Apparently, I can't look at my Twitter feed anymore, but apparently a lot of people find this very funny.
Now, the man responsible, John Rain Ravioli, doesn't sound very Jewish. Maybe Goldstein is just a nickname his friends at college called him. He was arrested and charged and put on a $100,000 bail and was facing federal prosecution for cyberstalking. However, those charges were dropped. He still does face one count of assault with a deadly weapon in Dallas County, a charge that carries a hate crime enhancement. On top of that, Kurt is suing him for monetary damages. While it may be a while before we see the final outcome of this case, and if gifting somebody on the internet is going to send you to prison, one thing does sort of stick out, and that is, once again, the convenient epilepsy coming to save Kurt from embarrassment or ridicule. Much like the case with Justin Berry, where he was having memory lapses to explain away the improprieties of paying a source, after Kurt had gone on national television in a disastrous appearance on Tucker Carlson, he suddenly was gifted and had an epileptic fit leading to a seizure, which changed the news cycle. And that's not to say that Kurt doesn't have epilepsy, or that the epilepsy he may have triggers seizures. That is just to say that it is a remarkable coincidence. Of course, Kurt Ikenwald is a very remarkable individual. What other word could exist to help to describe a man who would go through the arduous research process of looking up tentacle porn to show his family?
I like to build the world aside and furnish it with porn. Draw hentai pics and girls with dicks and tentacles galore.
The 7th started out like any other day for Kurt on social media. He was doing his damnedest to make himself look like a fool in front of as many people as possible. On this particular day, he was trying to prove the validity of something he said was sent to him. It was a flyer warning about the Jews. But how could he go about that? People were doubting what he was telling them. And so Kurt, being the meticulous and detail-oriented type of person that he is, decided the best way to prove that he had this particular item, that this was sent to him in real life, was to pull out his phone and take a screen cap of it. So he held up that pamphlet right against his computer monitor and he snapped a picture. Now, for most people that browse the internet, be it an image board or a forum, you've probably come across a form of a meme, a joke that's floating out there, and maybe you've wondered why that exists. Who could possibly be so foolish as to do the following? The joke usually takes a form of somebody taking a screenshot of their desktop to point something out to other users at the community they're a part of. But included in that screenshot is a little more information than they were really willing to share. They slightly overlooked it. But who could really be that foolish? I mean, that's obviously a joke. Nobody would leave tabs open like that and make themselves look like a giant idiot. Well, there's always a basis in reality for everything. Kurt Ikenwald, he is a living example of somebody who did just that. Because if we analyze that picture he uploaded, if we go all CSI on it, you're going to notice something. There's a little tab present in the picture. You got to zoom in a little bit. Clean that up. Zoom in a little bit more. What does that say? It looks like somebody already did the detective work for us. Hey, which tag was it that hooked you, Kurt? Below is the expanded version of what was on the tab on Kurt's computer. Let's take a look. Let's read through it and see what our journalist extraordinaire has been looking at. B. Chiku, English, Saha decensored. Male, dark skin, glasses, schoolboy uniform. Female, BBW, big ass, big breasts, bike shorts, bikini blowjob, defloweration, face sitting, glasses, impregnation, MILF, Nakadashi, schoolgirl uniform, smell. Stockings, swimsuit teacher X-ray, Yuri. Hello, my name is Kurt Desu. I love Japan. Well, it would appear that was some animated pornography, some hentai that Kurt was looking up on his own, and he accidentally forgot to close the tab when he screen shared with his thousands of followers. I wonder what explanation he gave people. I'm sure something that was completely normal and reasonable, and something that people didn't think was even weirder than the fact that he was sharing his favorite hentais with his followers. Sigh. Okay, I'm a dumbass. Believe it or not, my kids and I were trying to convince my wife that tentacle porn existed. I tried to find some to show her it was real, but I couldn't find any. And I ended up with this. My family reads my Twitter feed, so they know this is true. You know, it was just a typical day in the Eichenwald household. Me, my kids, and my wife were all looking up hardcore hentai pornography because they didn't believe it really existed. And even though if you did a Google search just for the word tentacle porn, there would be 1 billion results. I couldn't find any. I wasn't able to find any. And I ended up with this. Well, that's a little strange, because when I'm looking at the tags that are included in this particular tweet, Kurt, I don't see anything related to tentacles in it. But maybe I need to pay closer attention to the tags. Maybe let's see if we can puzzle it out. Why would you have stumbled on this one in your innocent search to show your children tentacle pornography? Well, there's Nakadashi, which translates to pies. Now, I'm not sure what kind of pies those might be, Kurt. I'm sure they're creamy, but I don't think they're tentacle related. Big breast, no. Blowjob, I don't think so. Could it be smell? Could you be smelling the octopus or squid that's coming to gang rape you? I mean, maybe. X-ray? I don't know. Maybe it's a schoolboy uniform, Kurt. Maybe the schoolboy uniform's what drew you here. You know, in your search for tentacle pornography to share with your family. Within a day's time, Kurt tried a new tactic after being the object of ridicule for much of the internet and all the people on Twitter having a great laugh at his expense. He hit them with this gem. Even if I was reading Japanese porn, what would be the big deal? I've read porn in my life. Not into cartoons, though. Are you guys Puritans or 8? Stop being so uptight, soccer moms. So what if I like to hang out with the kids and the wife looking up hardcore hentai? That's a normal red-blooded American thing to do. Like apple pie, or as my honorable friends would say, apple Nakadashi. Now, originally, I had planned on leaving this as one long-form video. But Kurt being Kurt has given me so much content to work with, that's nearly impossible, because even as I was working on this, even as I was editing it together, Kurt found himself once again in the middle of a miniature shitstorm which he had created. And so because of that, I'll be splitting the video here. I'll have the second part up tomorrow, where we'll continue on with the magical adventures of Kurt Ikenwald. Everything from threatening to dox lawmakers, to threatening to sue or blackmail YouTubers, or getting into fight with school shooting survivors. And I'll finally be able to put forward my theory that I call the Kurt Ikenwald J-curve. And trust me when I tell you, we are only just getting started. Kurt has quite a ways down to go, and he is aiming for rock bottom.
Hi everyone, it's your boy Zach, and Kurt Ikenwald is threatening to sue me.
Were you trying to get crazy with this, eh? Don't you know I'm loco?
You hear me? I'm not insane! This is not reality, not reality, not reality. This is reality. You know? Not reality, not reality. Relax, buddy. You're awake now.
And it was a link to hardcore Japanese cartoon pornography. It exists.
Konnichiwa, Oni-sons, and welcome back to part 2, the conclusion to the Kurt Ikenwald experience. Within Part 1, we covered some of the earlier controversies within Kurt's journalism career, namely his coverage of Justin Berry, a young man who found himself at the center of a child pornography ring. We took a look at some of the allegations and doubts that his contemporaries and peers at the time had when it came to how he went about pursuing the story. And those misgivings journalists felt at the time still persist even till today. Just as recently as last year, WikiLeaks Task Force tweeted this out. Reporter Kurt Ikenwald was an administrator of a child porn site, claims he was only posing as an online predator. 7,000 retweets. A story that people were still very much interested in, even 12 years down the road. We touched on Kurt's disastrous appearance on Tucker Carlson, where he informed the host of the Fox News show that he had a secret message from the CIA just for him. We looked at the assault by gifting that Kurt just barely survived while his wife tweeted out about his current medical condition. And finally, we finished off with Kurt's appreciation for Eastern animated pornography and his love of sharing that with his thousands upon thousands of Twitter followers. And I suppose that's really as good a segue as any to take a look at the bane of Kurt's life, his social media account and his interactions with other people. Because Kurt's behavior hasn't mellowed out or leveled off. If anything, it's escalated, and escalated repeatedly within a short period of time through his use of Twitter and other social media platforms. And one perfect example of just that would be when Kurt found himself in the middle of a fight between somebody within the comic book industry and somebody outside of it.
I don't take these comic book things all that serious, and if you do, like, get a life. Get a life!
Our journey begins back in mid-February when @RebelWoman Michelle Perez tweeted this out. Richard C. Meyer, aka the Diversity in Comics Guy, he did a 30-minute video about a comic book circular that featured an article of mine. He's a multiple divorcee piece of shit. He's a war veteran, so of course he's a crypto-fascist. Unfortunately, an IED didn't blow him up. Now that tweet, one among many, was part of an ongoing internet feud dubbed Comicsgate. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with it and looking for the basic gestalt or a hard and fast summary, Comicsgate is simply a dispute between those that enjoy a medium of entertainment and those within it who are seeking to change the direction the industry is going in, making it more progressive or politically correct, and focusing on issues of social justice rather than entertaining the customer who's paying money for the product. This is a trend we've seen take place over the last decade in multiple different forms of media, be it television or movies or video games, and Comicsgate itself focuses on the comics book industry. Now, Richard C. Myers, the Diversity in Comics Guy, the multiple divorcee piece of shit war veteran, as Michelle puts it, is somebody that's against this, that doesn't like this idea of shoehorning in progressive storylines within already existing franchises, or in trying to dictate to the audience what they should enjoy, rather than what they actually do enjoy. Michelle Perez, on the other hand, is a transsexual communist furry. Guess which side of this argument they're on? Within a few days of that tweet going up, Kurt stumbled across it. The most horrible person on Twitter today is @RebelWoman, a comic book writer with Image Comics, who wished an Afghan vet was killed by an IED, and celebrated the deaths of a number of GOP and religious figures. I don't care if you don't like people's politics. This is obscene. So I condemned a comic writer for Image Comics for wishing an Afghan vet had died, and celebrating conservative deaths. Then I got bombarded with outrage from comic book industry insiders. When did comics become evil political? And when did lunatics take over? I missed this event. Well, it seems that Richard and Kurt both agree upon this. They both see the infiltration of an entertainment medium by those with a political agenda as a bad thing. So I'm sure they're going to be the best of friends going forward.
So, real brief thing on Kurt Ikenwald. So you can see him right here on the screen. He's worked for a lot of big, Vanity Fair, MSNBC, New York Times. He's also very, very controversial and a real weirdo. So this is where the thesis of this comes in. I am not saying, Yahoo, Kurt Ikenwald's on my side. It's literally that there is a spectrum. And at one end is, me and a bunch of normies. At the other end is all the SJW comic book pros. And close to them, but between the normies and the extremists are guys like this. Kurt Ikenwald is a grimy guy. I would not leave any of my kids around him for a split second. I don't know if he's done anything actionable, but there's been little, and you can Google it, what he's kind of been like tied to stuff. It gets really grimy. I don't know, if he was like your cousin, you'd probably invite him to the picnic, but you'd keep an eye on him.
Or not, or potentially not. But Kurt, being that meticulous, detail-oriented, level-headed journalist we know, surely he took this well. Please let Diversity in Comics know to check his email. I defended him yesterday, and still do. Calling for the death of someone is wrong. However, today I am perfectly happy to start wrecking him if he ignores what I wrote to him. So all you loons, let him know. And what exactly was the reckoning that Kurt was going to visit upon Richard? Beginning of the letter that Kurt Ikenwald just sent me. Read, respond, or I'm suing you. Richard, imagine for a minute that while in Afghanistan you saw a group of jihadists drowning children. Imagine that you run in and rescue them, resulting in children being saved and the jihadists captured. Then imagine some left-wing jerks change the story into you were drowning the children. Then imagine that a group of conservative jerks conclude that that's a convenient story against you, and say not only that you were drowning children, but that you went to jail for it. I saved children. Hundreds of them. I got pedophiles locked up, testified before Congress about it. Kids I saved testified about my rescue, and changed laws. Then left-wing pro-pedophile lunatics, yes, they exist, start a campaign of disinformation about what really happened. Journalists, incapable of reading documents and sworn testimony, or interviewing witnesses, pick up a story and tell the lunatic version without contacting me. Finally, 2 journalists tell the full story, but then right-wingers decided I was the enemy, took the left-wing lies, added to them, and spewed them out. You added a little more to the lies last night. You, unknowingly working with pedophiles and left-wing freaks, attacked a guy who saved kids, and spun a series of lies about my career. You pulled garbage off the internet and pretended it was true. It would be as if I searched the internet, saw people calling you a Nazi, then wrote, not only is he a Nazi, but well, let's just say they don't want to leave any Jews nearby him if you want them to survive. So you're going to read this. You are going to correct the record with a new video that talks about how you were suckered into it by left-wing garbage used against you. Or I am going to finally stop the lies by using you as the end point by suing you. Now, I don't believe it has to get to that. You're a veteran. You have honor. You would, if you carry the principles you should, want to fix what you did. But if you want to push the line that a kid saver is a kid diddler, I have no problem using you as the declaration that this stops here. So you are going to do another video, apologizing to me. You are going to say that I sent you proof of what really happened, and that you fell for the left-wing garbage. And you are not going to mention the litigation threat, but rather present this as, he contacted me, he showed me the record, and I owe him an apology. Unlike the SJWs, you're going to admit you were wrong. And rather than doubling down, you're going to own up to it. Why am I bothering? Because this ends now. Because your deception to 50,000 people of the most noble thing my family ever did is somehow sordid and evil finally was the last straw. And because I believe military guys have integrity, unlike many journalists, I think you will care more about being right than about disclosing error. So I am loading you up with everything to show you the falsehood. Just taking down the video is not acceptable. If you tell the truth, I will have a video I can link to you showing you the falsity. If not, I can take you to court and prove it. Your choice. Unlike most of the bots and lunatics who spew this garbage, I know where you are. So I can take you to court and bring this to an end that way. Show integrity. Admit that condemning the guy who saved the drowning kids as a kid drowner based on internet bullshit is pure SJW type crap. Don't double down. So respond to this. Or go back to war. This time, with me. Now in that email from Kurt Ikenwald, aka the big boss from Zanzibar land, I think he was trying to impress Richard with his best Liam Neeson impersonation from the movie Taken.
I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want. If you are looking for ransom, I can tell you I don't have money. But what I do have are a very particular set of skills. Skills I have acquired over a very long career. Skills that make me a nightmare for people like you.
I know where you are. I'm going to find you and we are going to go to war. Internet war. But it's not like Kurt Ikenwald became completely unhinged and began sending numerous emails like some drunken ex-girlfriend that just can't get the hint that you don't want to see her anymore. Oh, wait a minute. No, he did exactly that. He did exactly that. But our little Kurt, he's not one to be deterred so easily. You may ignore his spamming your inbox like he's a Nigerian prince trying to get gold out of the US from an uncle's account that's been long forgotten. Well, he'll just turn around and use a new tactic. It's amazing how brave people are on the internet, but who shrivel into little piles of pink dust when they are asked to show some sense of integrity by having direct conversation. Kurt, he didn't ask to talk to you, ever. He's never even mentioned your name before. You bulldozed your way in and insisted you had the right to his time and energy because you defended him, and then threatened him when he didn't give in to you. No means no. Follow me. Well now, is Ethan a brave man? Will he throw himself into the lion's den and open up those DM messages to Kurt? Ethan was kind enough to share their conversation with me. A bizarre, meandering conversation that seemed to go on for an eternity. I've taken a few highlights to give you the basic idea of how this conversation went down between the two of them. Now call me. Say so publicly. Lawsuit threat off the table. I'm saying it to you. I'm not making any public announcement until someone calls me, and I get to have this conversation. Then you call Richard. Once we have made clear what reality is, I will announce. We don't negotiate with terrorists. You want to talk, you come as a friend. Then you call me. That's all I want. You call me, you talk to Richard, and I will say this is over. But you need to post that you were angry with the lawsuit threat, and it's off the table. I don't know why if someone says, pass the potatoes or I'll sue you, they don't just freaking pass the potatoes. He has in writing that there is no lawsuit threat if he contacts me. I have now amended that there is no lawsuit threat if you call me, and then you call him. Sorry, Kurt. Okay, then the threat remains, and it looks like it is my only alternative. Pass the potatoes, or I'll sue the fuck out of you, lad. So if you've been following along at home, Kurt notices that a comic book industry insider is taking shots at a critic outside the comic book industry. Decides to go in and defend him. That individual happened to read multiple articles about who Kurt Ikenwald is, and isn't necessarily the most thrilled to have him on his side. Kurt doesn't take too kindly to that, and responds with way too many emails saying he's going to sue the shit out of the guy if he doesn't create a new video and sing his praises to his audience. That YouTuber basically tells Kurt to go fuck himself. Kurt then gets a hold of somebody the YouTuber knows and demands that he calls him. And if he just will get on the phone and talk to Kurt, there won't be a lawsuit. But much like the YouTuber, his friend decides to say, maybe you should go fuck yourself instead. And Kurt doesn't take that so well. But it's not like Kurt Ikenwald really has a reputation for not overreacting. He likes to push the boundaries. He goes from being a reporter and into the sphere of an activist. Don't bring a knife to a bazooka fight. Journalist posts Oregon lawmakers' personal info online. Ikenwald went a step further on Friday, posting social security number, in addition to his phone number and home address for Ikenwald's 454,000 Twitter followers and countless others to see. Ikenwald quickly deleted the information, saying he'd made his point. Ikenwald did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Ikenwald wrote to post that it took me 25 seconds to get all the information about you, your wife, your son, tell him happy 25th, your neighbors, etc. Don't bring a knife to a bazooka fight. Now that I have demonstrated to Bill Post Oregon, I can get his home address, his personal phone number, and his social security number. I have deleted. However, Bill, one more time you take info submitted to legislature to dox people for disagreeing with you, it all goes back up. Apparently that little blue checkmark is just like Captain America's shield, protecting Kurt from any backlash over posting social security numbers on Twitter. I'm fairly certain anybody without a blue checkmark that did that would be deplatformed by Jack instantly. But it is interesting to see this coming from Kurt Ikenwald, somebody who repeatedly says that his family is targeted, that his children and wife face all sorts of terrible dangers from people that come after him, to then turn around and post the information of a lawmaker's family, to target his wife, his children, and his neighbors, simply to try to make a point. To go even farther than most people would go by posting social security numbers, and then deleting them and bragging that if this guy steps out of line, he's going to hit him again. But could Kurt possibly one-up himself? I mean, it's only been about a week or two. What else is left for him to outdo himself? Well, I suppose there is going after the survivor of a school shooting, but surely Kurt wouldn't be that suicidal. Hopefully the Laura Ingraham blow-up will teach conservatives you are not debating gun control when you insult survivors of a mass slaughter for advocating laws you don't agree with. You are just being infantile bullies. Want to debate policy? Great. Want to insult kids? Shut up. But he won't debate. Just ask Kyle, who offered. As I said, Kyle quickly made clear that his entire shtick is insults. I invited conservatives to a debate without invective, bringing exactly what you're told not to bring. and expecting to get accepted is how to get ignored. Wait, but Kurt, you literally just insulted a survivor. See how this game works? See, you went for a little while and I thought, this guy sounds reasonable. Let me look at Kyle again, but then, boom, back to the typical nonsense. If Kyle can demonstrate he can debate beyond slinging insults and conspiracy theories consistently, I will consider. Kyle, you continue to disappoint. Trafficking in fantasies, fine. Your followers are infantile. Your only form of debate is insult. And you wonder why I have no respect for you. Well, that's a bit strange. How could Kurt instantly go from condemning Laura Ingraham to doing exactly what he was condemning her for? I owe an apology to Kyle. I have no idea how many times I have commented to him. There is a high school kid who has a podcast who keeps challenging me to debates with insults. I mixed up their names. Please ignore every tweet I've sent. They were written for someone else. Last on this convo involving kid I mixed up with Kyle, they became mixed up because this kid's followers swarmed me, belittling my health, insulting me endlessly. I blocked many. Kyle is not responsible, but his followers did the same thing, which led to the confusion. I did not mix you up because his name was Kyle. I mixed you up because your followers suddenly attacked my feed with your tweet insulting me. It was the same thing that happened with the other kid, with the same vicious attacks on my disability. So I thought you were him.
Hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right.
Proactive, been using for months and love your product. Don't love your support of MSNBC's Kurt Ikenwald. We are aware of this incident and have pulled our ads from the network as a result. We are working diligently. For those like Ben Shapiro who are taking my entire situation with Kyle to push a lie, I thought he was someone else. Stop going after MSNBC. My contributor contact with them expired more than a month ago. Not with them. Need to edit my profile. Good old Kurt Ikenwald. Even when he's not employed with you, he somehow finds a way to get your advertisers pulled. That is impressive. He can destroy a business just by people thinking he's associated with them. With all these constant shitstorms and fuck-ups on the part of Kurt, you have to wonder, where can he go from here? What other mountain is left to climb after the disasters and catastrophes that he has left in his own wake? When he's not busy destroying his own reputation as a journalist, he's making sure those who were former associates of him are losing business. Well, while I'm not able to exactly foresee the future, I can bring a little theory into play on what might be happening and where this might end up going. But to do that, I'm going to need to break out a graph. Now, on the horizontal, we have time. And on the vertical, we have insanity. And there's our little Kurt. That's from around, let's say, 2005-ish. That would be back during his Justin Barry article and then all the fallout from that. So, it's a roughly a 2-year period, but that's our starting point. And then we've got a gap, about 10 years, let's say a decade. Now, I'm sure that knowing Kurt did some really retarded shit in that time frame, but I'm just unaware of it. So I call this the dark ages of Kurt. I don't know what happened in there. I can't even speculate on it. It's a missing gap. But after we move past that dark ages period, we start to see a lot of activity take place in a very short amount of time. The hentai incident, threatening to sue YouTubers, doxing lawmakers, going after school shooter survivors, until finally we reach the point where we are right now with the current day Kurt. Now, if you were to draw a little line, if you were to connect all of these points, from our starting position in 2005 down into the dead unknown period of the Dark Ages, all the way up into the current year, you get a nice little J-curve showing up. And that's what I like to call the Ikenwald J-curve. You'll notice that as time goes on, the incidents of insanity increase exponentially. And this is where we are right now. I like to call this the danger zone, because you don't want to fly anywhere near it. But hey, what do I know? I'm just some lunatic alt-writer launching a mega attack against poor innocent Kurt. Apparently he's under the impression that YouTube videos and Twitter are like Pokemon battles. Then again, it was super effective. So what's next for Kurt? Where does he go from here? Well, judging from the information we can glean from the J-curve, it's pretty easy to speculate that sometime in the next, day to a week, he's going to do something even stupider than what he's done before. You can see that each incident of him embarrassing himself or sullying his own reputation begins to increase in frequency as time goes on. What used to take a year or a month or a week is now a day or an hour. He's a real-life version of the Flash if the Flash was a giant fuck-up that kept tripping over his own 2 feet. But I suppose we're going to have to wait for him to leave hibernation before we can be sure about this. And knowing Kurt, he can't stay away from social media for too long. After all, he's going to have a lot of free time on his hands not working for Newsweek or MSNBC or really anybody else. I just can't understand why nobody wants to hire this amazing reporter.